Welcome to the Truth and Fertility podcast. My name is Haley and I am your host. I work at an OBGYN clinic where I teach women and couples how to chart their cycles so they can either achieve or avoid pregnancy and also to manage their fertility. I have a huge passion to teach women and couples about the beauty of their fertility and how the pill is never the answer to women's health. There's a lot of good and not so good information out there about fertility. And so my goal with this podcast is to help you sort out the truth from the weeds. I want to teach you how to chart your cycle and to reach your family planning goals while also maybe even possibly locating hormonal imbalances and to receive proper treatment. I want to help you get in the best hands that you can with the best doctors that you can to reach optimal reproductive health. So if you're ready to get on this journey with me to learn more about your reproductive system, how it was created and how it should be working, and the best medicine in order to make it work if it's not, then you are in the right place. Welcome to the Truth and Fertility podcast. My name is Haley. I'm your host. And today's going to be a little bit of a different podcast. I've got a little bit of a different type of topic for you today. And it's something that has been just on my heart in different circumstances that have been kind of currently playing out in my life. The first of which was I actually just got back from Florida. My dad's lifelong best friend. I've known this man my entire life. He just got baptized, confirmed, his first communion, and married in the Catholic Church. And for those of you that have been listening to this podcast, you probably know that by now, that I am a practicing Catholic. And so this was a really big and special moment for this family friend of ours. So we went down to Florida where he lives to go watch him get his sacraments and to get married on the same day, which is insane, and just to celebrate him. And so I was able, before we left, we were able to have a really just good conversation. You know those times when you just have a good conversation with somebody that just, it feels like you've been talking for 20 minutes, but 4 hours have gone by, and it just... there was not a topic that we left out. We just talked about his conversion and about just all things, with the church and church teaching and what brought him to his beliefs in it and all those things. But one of the things we talked about was just the Catholic Church's teaching on sexuality. And if you are not super familiar with what Catholic Church is teaching on sexuality is, I do recommend that you look into, we call it the theology of the body. And so what this is our three popes ago, which is kind of crazy, Pope John Paul II, he did a series of talks all about, again, church teaching on human sexuality and why do we believe that sex is reserved just for marriage, right? Why do we believe that contraception is not okay? It's not morally okay for marriage. But also, I really strive to make this podcast, as much as I believe the moral side of things, I really want this podcast to explain the science behind it too, right? Because everything that I believe on a moral standpoint has science backing it up, which I believe is just incredible. It's amazing. It's how faith and reason go hand in hand and how science and religion really truly do go hand in hand. So back to this conversation I was having with this family friend, we were talking a lot about theology of the body, right? The Catholic Church is teaching on human sexuality. And I asked him, I'm like, hey, have you heard of the teaching on free, total, faithful, and fruitful? And he was like, no. And so I outlined it for him. And it was just... it's something that is just, it's such a beautiful teaching that I might just be coming from a Catholic brain right now. And, if you're not Catholic and listening to this, I really hope that this still resonates with you. I really truly believe that it will, because there are 4 main kind of languages of sex that the church teaches. And the reason that the church has any sort of teaching on on sex and on human sexuality is because of how sacred an act it is. It really, truly is sacred. It's something that is reserved to be beautiful. It's reserved to be a language spoken to your spouse. And so that language, the church is basically teaching us how to speak that language to make it beautiful. I mean, if you think about somebody who's just starting to learn English, right? It's kind of broken up. It's not perfect, right? Maybe they can get across what they're trying to say, but sometimes it can be difficult to try to understand what they're trying to say when they don't know exactly how to speak English well. But for somebody that either grew up speaking English or knows how to speak English well, it's seamless, right? You're hearing me speak right now. I am speaking in English, but I guarantee that you have not had to sit here the whole time and be like, okay, she's speaking English. How do I do you know what I mean? Like when somebody is trying to speak a language, but they have not learned that language well enough to speak it well, it's hard to hear it. It's hard to understand it. And it's hard to understand what they're trying to convey, what they're trying to get across, right? So it's the same idea when the church is teaching this language of human sexuality, this language that the human body speaks in this intimate and sacred act of sex. And so it's not because sex is dirty. It's not because sex is bad. It's not because sex is this negative thing that we're trying to say, no, don't do it. No, don't do it. No, don't do it. It's saying, no, sex is so sacred. It is so beautiful. It is so important that there must be a setting in which it can be spoken best, that it can be understood best, that it can thrive in its sacredness, I guess. So anyways, with all that to be said, we have kind of a 4-pronged language for it. And this goes for sex, but it also just goes for what should human love look like. And so it's these 4 things. It's free, total, faithful, and fruitful. So I was telling this family friend about these 4 things. The other thing too is that my sister-in-law is actually getting married this weekend. And so marriage has just been on my brain, on my mind. And so I thought, what better way to celebrate these marriages than to really teach this language, this beautiful language of sex. So the first one is free. Sex must be freely given. Love must be freely given, right? In the Catholic Church, we don't have arranged marriages because you have to be free. You have to be freely consenting of this marriage, of this sex, right? In direct opposition to this idea is rape. Rape is without consent. It's without freedom. And so sex, this intimacy, marriage, you must be able to freely give of yourself, within the intimacy of the marital embrace and not be coerced in any way. Okay, so that's the first one, free. I must be free to love, free to give myself to my spouse, to you. Now, the second is total. I'm giving my whole self. I'm holding nothing back, right? So within the language of sex, this can really be, when you are in such an intimate and vulnerable place as sex should be, right? It must be a total gift of yourself to that other person, a free and a total gift. You're holding nothing back. And so what would be something that would directly oppose this? Well, contraception. Contraception is saying, I give my whole self to you, but I'm holding back my fertility, or I'm holding back my potential parenthood, or I'm holding back something, a direct and natural consequence to what this act could give, right? We're holding that back. We're taking away something. We're taking away the ability to give your whole self, holding nothing back. And if you think about like a condom, for example, a condom is literally called a barrier method. You're placing a barrier between you and your spouse, or you and your partner, the other person. It is a barrier. So you cannot give your full and total self while using contraception. It's going against what this act is truly saying. If the act itself is meant to say that I'm giving my whole self to you, holding nothing back, but then you put something in the middle of you and that person, it's completely contradicting what that act is meant to be saying, right? You're not giving your whole self anymore. You're putting a barrier between you and your spouse. You're holding something back. Whereas the act itself is meant to be a language to say, this is what my love looks like to you. It looks like giving my whole self to you. And if we think about it in the idea of Christianity, right? Christ on the cross, we just celebrated Easter too. We just had Good Friday and we went into Easter, and Christ on the cross, he held absolutely nothing back. Nothing was spared. So when we are loving our spouse, when we are having sex with our spouse, that love that is shared between you and your spouse is meant to be a sign of the one who loved you first, of the one who gave his whole life for you and held nothing back. So free and total, okay? Free, total, faithful. Faithful is the next one. Faithful, probably the most, I don't know if I have to go too much into what faithful means. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but meaning I'm being faithful to you, right? I'm not committing adultery against you. I'm not, I have promised my life to you, to this one person. I am being faithful until the end of my life. I am being faithful to you. And so again, what directly contradicts that? Okay, well, adultery, cheating, right? Pornography, masturbation, all of these things goes against your promise of fidelity, of faithfulness to your spouse. So free, total, faithful. The last one is fruitful. Fruitful means that love cannot be contained in and of itself. In its essence, love must expand. It must. In Christianity, we believe that there is a Trinitarian God. We have one God in three persons. It's weird. I can't really explain it. It is one God in three persons, but it's three persons of the Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Why? Because God is love, and love cannot be contained in itself. It must bring fruit. It must be shared. It requires that. Love requires that it is shared. So what does fruitfulness look like? Well, biologically speaking, it looks like children. that is the regular consequence of the sexual act is children. And by consequence, I don't mean that necessarily in a negative sense. I just mean this is the end, like, right? This is the one of the purposes of sex. Now, another purpose is the unity of the couple, right? Unifying the couple is one purpose, and then procreation is the other purpose. So that's the most natural way that the sexual act is fruitful. But talking to this friend of mine who was in our, this friend that we went to Florida for, right? He's in an older age. His wife is in an older age, right? The possibility of children for them is probably not there. And there are other families, other couples that are also struggling with infertility. So how do we How do we reconcile that, right? Well, that doesn't mean that their marriages can't be fruitful anymore. It's just not going to be fruitful in maybe the most basic concept of what fruitfulness would be, right? But it's going to be fruitful in different ways because, again, I cannot emphasize this enough that love cannot be contained in and of itself. Otherwise, it's not love. Love must be fruitful. I'm thinking of just an example of a couple that I didn't know personally, but a friend of mine in college, it was this couple, they were the youth ministers at her parish, and they had struggled with infertility for a long time, may still even be struggling. I don't know if they ever were able to have children, but the way that their fruitfulness of their marriage showed was through their ministry of youth ministry. They really became parental figures for a lot of the kids that were in their youth ministry program. And it was really just beautiful to see how they really took a lot of those kids under their wing and really lived out that motherhood and that fatherhood in a different way, right? In a way of their ministry. And so that's just one example. And I can't say for every single couple what that example is going to be like, because the fruitfulness of their love is going to show in their different talents and from their different life experiences and whatever is going on in their life, right? It could look different, but that's needless to say, though, that their love is still going to be fruitful in one way or another. So sex, I keep interchanging how these 4 languages, right? Free, total, faithful, fruitful. These 4 languages are the languages of sex, but I keep interchanging it with marriage because of the fact that, at least in the Catholic Church, I can't say for any other churches, but at least in the Catholic Church, when you give your vows to your spouse, you are vowing those 4 things. You are vowing that you have come here freely. No one has coerced you to be there. You're coming here freely to give yourself totally and faithfully and fruitfully to your spouse. These are the things that we vow. And so on our wedding day, we vow these things with our words. And on our wedding night, we vow these things through our bodies. This is why we believe that sex is reserved for marriage. It's because of these 4 languages that are spoken in the sexual act. Freely, totally, faithfully, fruitfully, this love that I am sharing with the other. This language cannot be given in the fullness of what it is unless it is within the promise of that vow, unless it has been spoken to the other person in their vows with witnesses in front of God, then is spoken and renewed in the intimacy that they share that night. And what's even cooler about this is that in the Catholic Church, we teach that every single act of the marital embrace of intercourse between a husband and his wife is a renewal of their vows. How amazing is that, you guys? Like, just take a step back for a second. And again, I know I'm nerding out on the whole Catholic thing. And if you're not Catholic, I still hope that this is something that is you can at least appreciate, with the fact that these languages of sex make it so that it is a beautiful act, that it is a good act, right? That it is something that you share with your spouse to say with the language of the body that you've given your whole self, you vowed to give your whole self to that person freely, totally, faithfully, fruitfully for the rest of your life. That is why sex is so beautiful. It's so powerful. It's so sacred. It's not just nothing. I think we live in a culture that says, it's not important. Maybe, not important, but not important enough to be given a valid context, not important enough to be given some sort of weight. right? Like it's something that can just be flippantly done with anyone, wherever, no commitment, no strings attached. But that's not what the language of the body is speaking. And so when I want to go as far to say that when a couple is having sex, but they have not given their vows yet, they have not said with their language through speech that they are going to give them, they have vowed to give themselves to each other in these 4 ways. If they have not yet given that, but then they're trying to say those things with their bodies, I can go as far to say that it's a lie, you guys. It's not expressing the fullness of the truth that this act of sex is meant to express. It can't. This language can only be properly understood in its context of marriage, in its context of till death do us part of these vows. And I think we can also see too that when we start to take sex out of this context, there's a lot of consequences that we find, and negative consequences, right? We have a lot of broken hearts, a lot of single mothers, abortion, unfaithfulness, pornography, masturbation. We have a lot of negative consequences that come when we start to devalue sex. So for those of you that are listening to this that are married, I challenge you to start being super intentional with sex. Start to recognize what you are actually saying to your spouse when you enter into that act, and to recognize how sacred that act is and how important that act is. Actually, that's something that's actually some homework that I will give some of my clients who are married, and they, what I ask my clients to do is when they're charting their cycle, that they're actually putting an eye on the days that they have intercourse. And it's not because I'm nosy. It's because, well, first of all, if you get pregnant, we want to know when that happened, right? So for logistics speaking, it's mainly for that. But I also get a glimpse to see how intentional a couple is with it. And I'm thinking of one client right now actually 2, that I've noticed that they were not being super intentional with it. They both had crazy jobs. They had kids in the mix. And I kept saying, any acts of intercourse on this chart? And she'd say, oh, no, we're just way too busy right now. And so I ended up giving her a piece of homework. And it was, the next time that your husband is home for an extended amount of time, because they had a kind of crazy work schedule, I want you to have sex at least once during that time. Because if it is something that is a priority for you, you will make it happen. You will find a time where your kids are napping. You will find a time when you will find a time. If it's a priority, you will find a time. So make it a priority because of how important this act is, right? So there's that. And also for my single friends out there, or if you're engaged, right? And you're preparing you're not yet entering into that marital act yet, but you're preparing for it or you're longing for it. Do not lower these standards, because the only thing that can happen by lowering these standards and by ignoring the language, the true language that sex is meant to convey, the only thing that can happen are negative consequences. The only thing. It's actually, I'll have to find this study out there. I'm sure you could just Google it, but there is a study that shows that couples that live together first before they get married are more likely to get divorced later on. Isn't that crazy? So we think that we need this trial period. We think that we need this experience with sex in order to be good enough at it for your marriage or for the right one, right? No. Learn the language of sex with the person that you've trusted the most in your life to be willing to get married to them. That's when you can freely learn the language of sex, right? So don't lower these standards for yourself, for your future spouse, for your current spouse if you have one. Don't lower these standards, because this is the true language of sex. And anything less than it, it's just not good, you guys. It's not going to bring good fruit. It's not going to bring good consequences. And it's not an act of true love. An act of true love is saying yes to this actual language of the body, this free, total, faithful, and fruitful language that we can speak to our spouse with our words at our vows and with our bodies every time we renew those vows. So this is what I'll leave you with today. I told you guys it would be a different episode here today, but as I mentioned, this has been on my heart, and it's a teaching that every single person, especially every single married couple, needs to know. Because sex is not bad. Sex is not dirty. Sex is actually so good, and it is so beautiful, and it is so sacred that it must be protected, and that language must be learned how to be spoken well in order to convey what it actually is truly meant to convey, in the fullness of love that Christ had for you when he died on the cross, and that love that he exampled for us to have for others, and specifically our spouse. Thank you guys again so much for listening to today's episode, and I will talk to you again next week. Thank you for listening to the Truth and Fertility podcast. If you are enjoying this content, it would be amazing if you could leave a 5-star review. That helps me tremendously to be able to continue to produce these episodes for you. Remember that these podcasts are available on Apple, Spotify, and Amazon, and YouTube. And you can always go to my website, truthandfertility.com, to learn more. Thanks again for listening, and I'll talk to you again next week.